Gary Staub is asking a question here. Hi, Gary. Gary is the one I mentioned who we were chatting last night about the slice in my forehead. Gary says, tell me how your heart deals with producing objects in a digital world versus analog. That's a really interesting question. I have many layers of answers to this. The first thing I'll tell you is that if anybody out there has not yet watched Light and Magic on the Disney Channel in the Star Wars track, directed by Lawrence Kasdan, how many episodes? 8? Yeah, I think it's 8 episodes. The whole history of Industrial Light and Magic from pre-Star Wars to the present day, interviewing many players who are close, personal, lovely friends of mine, colleagues, people I've worked with for over 20 years. And it is an incredible dive into... I love talking about my time at ILM. I love talking about the camaraderie and the sharing economy and egalitarianism that was really present in the shop when I showed up in 1998. And what watching Light and Magic makes clear to me is that that's all built into the design of it by George, that the very people he invited up to Marin after Star Wars set in motion a ball that rolled into a company that was the company I met 20 years later. And a lot of my model making colleagues at ILM, people like John Goodson, Dave Fogler, and others went on to take the training for doing CG model making and worked on many pictures doing that, just as many pictures as they worked on doing physical model making. And what I've heard reported from them is that the process feels totally creatively similar. Solving problems digitally feels just as satisfying to get to the right solution as it does in the model work. And that makes sense to me. That makes sense. If you look at the early days of digital effects and you look at films like Perfect Storm, Perfect Storm has some effects in it that are beautiful structurally, but some of the model making in those digital effects, like the container ship with containers falling off, that container ship is just way under-modeled in the final film. And it's under-modeled, I think, because the model maker making it did not have the institutional experience that we had in the model shop of how to do little things like adding rust streaks and rivets and panel lines and other stuff to add scale to a model. And to their credit, Industrial Light and Magic understood that institutional knowledge existed in the model shop, and they sought to make the threshold to entry into the digital realm really low. And they did. And they brought over a lot of model makers, and that's only to the benefit of all the movies made hence. That being said, I still have a really difficult time wheeling digital work into my process. And it's not a philosophical bent. It's not like I'm like, poo-poo. I spend so much bloody time on the computer. But for me, over the past few years, this shop has become meditation. The practice of being in here and iterating and succeeding and failing, that happens more than anything else, is a deep part of my working process. And I have found the process of adjusting things digitally, sending them to the printer, printing them, washing them, and getting them out to not feel as satisfying. So that's why I have done it less. I do foresee that there will be a time when I figure out the right flow, and it probably honestly means a dedicated computer that is sitting there at the printer that I can utilize right there. But, it's just about lowering that threshold to entry into the digital realm. I really do believe it'll become part of my process. It's just slow. And I'm not trying to speed it up. I'm not trying to slow it down. And it's not a specific philosophy, because there are tremendous and incredible things we can do in the digital realm. We've been doing some stuff over at Lumafield where their scans can scan not just undercuts, but the entire internal structures of things cast inside of other things. This gives us access to design solutions that are absolutely inconceivable 20 years ago. That's really exciting to me. And I look forward to ways in which that can augment my process. Also, working within a digital realm allows so much more collaboration. I can have a model that I could share with you across the world. We can make two things separately. We can collaborate on them. That is also thrilling to me. So while I'm absolutely a digital Luddite in this shop in practice, it is not because of a bent that thinks the computers are worse than what happens here. It is just my personal bent right now in time. Thanks, Gary. You will meet Gary here in the cave at some point soon. Oh my gosh, John Shearer has also gifted some tested premium memberships, and JV has gifted memberships. My goodness, you guys. Thomas Essen, JV, John Shearer, thank you. Thank you so much. Happy holidays. Happy end of 2022. Steve W. asks, if you could have any tool that you don't already have, what would it be and why? That answer changes all the time, but right now, right at this moment, it's a surface grinder. I want a surface grinder. What is a surface grinder? A surface grinder, okay. Behind me on your right, my left, is a milling machine, which is like a 3,000-pound drill press. And the reason it weighs 3,000 pounds is because you can not only drill stuff with it, but you can put bits in it and just work laterally across those bits, and it'll just carve up metal, wood, plastic, whatever you want. And it'll do it to an incredibly precise degree, plus or minus like about 1,000th of an inch. The problem is much of the industrial world operates at a refinement that is much higher than 1,000th of an inch. And when you want that, hold on just a second. For instance, this is a 246 block. No, it's a 234 block. That's it, 234 block. This is great. This is a setup block. It's got some tapped holes, some through holes, and machinists use these in all sorts of different ways within the machining practice. But if you wanted to make one of these, you would rough it out on the mill. But to get it to be super precisely 4 inches by 3 inches by 2 inches, the mill is not the final step in making a 1, 2, 3 block. It is the surface grinder. And that is because the mill, like I said, the mill can take things off plus or minus 1 thou. You can get better than that, but that's about your average. The surface grinder is where you go to tenths and hundreds of thousands. And the surface grinder is just what it sounds like. It is usually a magnetic chuck that holds the work and moves it past a diamond-dressed grinding wheel and removes infinitesimal amounts in incredibly precise ways to get to surpassingly close tolerance measurements. There are surface grinders that are nice and small, that are like, you know, a couple feet wide and 5 feet tall. Stefan Gottseventer has a benchtop one that I covet. And I go to Craigslist all the time looking at surface grinders. And at some point, and that point will be when I clear out the display room and move my shop more and expand out, a surface grinder plus a lathe that I have down in LA are going to be 2 of the first tools that are going to go into that space. Because I would like to get to this level of refinement with some of my pieces. And I'm starting to, 3 years ago, I would have thought, surface grinder, I'm never going to use that. It's like as a carpenter, I don't think I'm ever going to add a joiner to my process here because it's just, that's a much higher level of work than I do here. But surface grinding, it started to come into my consciousness and I want to add it. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.